Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Sam Straka. I'm a group product manager here at Red Canary, and I'm going to be the presenter today. Really appreciate everybody coming and excited to jump in. So here's the situation. Identity risk is on the rise. In the threat detection report, which I think we'll post a link to in the chat here, we've seen a 4x increase in identity threats over the past year. When you look at the threat detection report, you can see that cloud accounts, that attack technique, featured as the most popular attack technique last year. There's just more of these things than ever from our view. What makes that complicated and challenging is that identity threats are not easy to work with. Right? They can be hard to detect, they move fast, and they require a specific and really intentional response plan to get right when it comes to disrupting these threats. So over the course of the next 20 minutes or so, I invite you to lean in, ask questions, take notes, and by the end, after we run through the quick presentation and demo, I hope that you have a clear sense of how Red Canary approaches identity security and hopefully have learned something to help bolster your program, whether you work with us or not. So let's jump in. Identity risk and why is it so hard? We think these things are harder than other types of detections because the signals can be more subtle. Oftentimes, especially when you've got a compromised account, the attacker is trying their best to blend in, and it can be difficult to sort out normal weird user behavior from attacker behavior. The context can be broadly distributed. It's coming from lots of different systems, including identity systems. Once attackers have these compromised credentials, they can move as fast as they want to, depending on whether they have a session that's time bound or if they just have a full ownership of the creds. They can move fast or slow, right? It's difficult to know, depending on what their motivation is. And the response is interesting, right? Based on the fact that it's hard to be very deterministic 100% of the time. You want to be able to introduce some friction into the user workflow to make sure that you're making life difficult for attackers, but you're not totally disrupting the business along the way. So to tackle these challenges, Red Canary takes the following approach. We think that the foundation of a good identity threat detection program and what we've based our program on is context. And the context here, is really what gives us confidence in the determinations we make and the investigations that we conduct. So what we're looking at here is a login. The login is the moment in these scenarios where you have to make a decision. Was this a normal user doing what they were supposed to, maybe under slightly strange circumstances, or was this an attacker who is trying their best to blend in and let their OPSEC slip just a little bit to tip us off that they have credentials that they shouldn't? And the way that we approach sort of the foundation here is by looking at the data surrounding the authentication. Immediately, you're looking at the factors that lead to the login. Were they coming from a VPN? What browser were they using? What device are they logging in from? Is it a mobile device? Is it a workstation? Is the device registered and known to the org, maybe joined with Entra ID, or is it, a new device, something that's unknown? And then what did the login go on to do? What happened after? What did they access? What data did they look at? What actions did they take? That's great tactically. That's the immediate moment that you're in. But you also want to look, and we sort of build out a context that's broader in scope and over a longer period of time. So when you're thinking about VPNs, not only the exact VPN in question, but how does that fit into their pattern of behavior? Have they ever used this VPN before? How often are they using it? Under what circumstances? Is it just when they're on their mobile device, or do they bounce around between devices when they use this VPN? Are they an account that likes to travel? Are they generally on the move, or have the past 500 logins all been from the corporate office? That all helps build some context as we decide attacker or not. And then the same on the other side. Are these apps part of a normal pattern of behavior? Is the Graph API something that's normally accessed? We'll talk about that a little bit more in the upcoming demo. But having both the specific and the broader context is critical. Okay, once we have the context set, then we need to apply our intel. Red Canary intelligence is what takes all this context and makes it actionable and useful in the service of detecting threats in our customers' environments. So if you look at the bottom two items on this left bar over here, what do adversaries do and what could adversaries do? Our threat research and intel teams are constantly looking across all of our customers to find the threats that are realized and what do they have in common? How can we group them? What characterizes them? What indicators of compromise can we pull out? And we take that intel and we apply it to all of our customers, creating what we like to call a herd immunity type of effect. And so, as long as we can identify it, we can help prevent it for the next customer. But we don't just want to be reactive, right, and responsive. We want to be proactive as well. So the threat also keeping an eye on the latest breaking reports. They're also always looking for hypotheses that they can feed to our threat hunting team. We'll address that here in a bit too. That the threat hunters can go out and check. Hey, we think this might be something that merits an investigation. Can you guys just go run it down across all the customers and see what you can come up with? The intel is key. You build that on top of the context that establishes normal behavior, and we feed it to our process for identity threat detection and response. The foundation, like I mentioned at the top left, is collecting the data and building context. The first thing we do is identify known behavior. We call these heuristics that can clearly flag malicious identity behavior, just sort of granularly, atomically, among itself. So examples here, you've got someone who's been logging in from Chrome version 135, and then you see them immediately log in thereafter from a down level Chrome version. People don't usually downgrade, their browsers. It doesn't happen very often in normal business. And so, independent of anything else, it's worth an investigation. Another one, if you're thinking about email inbox rules that are very short, maybe one character long, and are keyed in on specific, trade secret type of words, we don't need any other context. We should investigate that, right? That's enough to trigger a detection. But that class of detections, that heuristics, only gets you so far. The second class is built on these per user baselines. So what we do is we take all that contextual data, and our data science team uses tools available, the latest tools, to create these baselines of normal behavior, both for an individual user and for a customer, that we use as context for the next two steps. Once you have the baseline, you can write and tune anomaly detection rules. And what these are, they're either machine learning based, or they're using other techniques, but they're looking for situations where someone's acting abnormally, and in a way that we know attackers can slip up in their OPSEC, right? They can tip their hand. So those would initiate a investigation alongside those heuristic detections we already talked about. But in either case, no matter how we get to a threat, whether it's through threat hunting or these detectors in our system, the behavioral context, the baselines that we've established help us to investigate these no matter what. So say somebody, has a down level version of Chrome. Well, what else have they been up to? Is Chrome their normal browser? Is this machine one that they've been using in the recent past? So no matter where the detection comes from, it's incredible to have the context. And when we find these situations where the context is lacking, we go back to the beginning of the cycle and add data, add context that we can use to investigate more thoroughly next time. So we're constantly improving this process in our system. This is how we address the problem programmatically. The next slide, I'm going to talk to you about how our people, our experts, sit on top of this system to provide even greater level of coverage. So when you think about our threat hunting team, right, these are, in my opinion, the heart and soul of Red Canary. They're the ones that are really there side by side with our customers throughout the process. We'd mentioned this earlier, but they are always hunting through the data that's in our environment and across our customers and chasing a hypothesis, right? This may come from the Intel team, it may come from something somebody posts in Slack, and they'll just go check just on a hunch to see what's going on. And these, whether or not they turn into threats, will get published in customer environments so you can see what we're looking for and how we're approaching this rigorously and programmatically. The second thing that they do is they assist and aid our automated response. We'll show you how the automated response works in a little bit, but the threat hunting team is also there just a phone call away, right? The robots are great and they're incredibly important to respond at machine speed and limit the breakout time. But sometimes you just need to pick up the phone and call someone to say, hey, have I done everything necessary here to close this out? What else would you recommend? What else should I check to make sure I feel good about this? The threat hunting team is always there 24/7 to help our customers respond. And then when the dust settles, the team is there to help advise on policies, right? Whether these are a tweak to a conditional access policy or other controls that you might think about implementing. The threat hunting team is always there after action to help. How do we prevent this from ever happening again? So we've gone over how the system detects these threats and approaches it, and how our team uses the system to be there for our customers and fill in the gaps. And so the next thing I want to do is show you a demo, right? We're going to jump in and I'm going to go in character here for a little bit. So, just stick along with me. I'm going to step out of my Red Canary and I'm going to be a SOC analyst at our demo customer here, Grand Scale Industries. I'm going to walk you through how, these philosophies and this approach, is practically applied for customers within the Red Canary product. Wrong direction. Here we go. Okay, so I'm on shift and I just got a Slack that said that there's a suspicious activity detected via Red Canary. So the first thing I'll do is I'll click in and see what I can find. First thing you'll see at the top is a really straightforward description of what's going on. It's a user creating an email forwarding rule that sends to an external Gmail address. They've logged into several services and Red Canary's identified one of these services as fraudulent or risky. Okay, let's investigate. So I'll slide down, I can see the identity in question. And then on the threat timeline, I can see the series of events, right? We talked about earlier, the before and after. What is going on here that led to and determined that this is something I should be looking at. The first one was a login to Exchange Online. And I can see a comment from a Red Canary analyst here that said, there were multiple login attempts, but a sample and the one that they pulled out showed a geolocation, ISP, and time of day that was significantly different from the user's normal pattern of behavior. That's fantastic. But my first question is, what's normal look like? How do they know that this isn't what was expected? And so what I'll do is I'll jump over to, I can click on the identity here and jump over to an insight, drill down into this identity and understand what normal looks like. Red Canary has some really bleeding edge AI capabilities where we're aggregating this data behind the scenes and then pulling it together and summarizing it with our Red Canary Copilot capabilities to just make it really accessible and easy to understand what normal looks like, instead of having to track all the raw data down across systems and really try to piece together a profile of the user by yourself. So I can see really quickly, this person's normally logging in from the USA. They've got a range of IP addresses. And down here, I can see, what is normal. Red Canary pulls out insights that are, this is normal, normally from a Mac device, OS operating system, and Chrome. And then they'll also highlight things that are recently abnormal, right? Like a login from an iPhone or Safari. And then below, it's summarized here exactly what's going on, right? What does normal look like? Let's further characterize what this means. Where are they signing in from? Well, we want to see our successful logins from the same places as the failed logins. That's typically how you want to see that. I want to see any VPN or Tor utilization. Is this something that's normal? Also will help me characterize back on my threat timeline when I jump back. How abnormal is this VPN or this geolocation for this user? What browsers are they using and what version? Time of day. If I want to orient this to mountain time to see when things are happening, I can see when the user usually logs in, and then the context of the IPs that they're using. So typically from corporate, maybe headquarters, and then sometimes from residential. So now I have a better sense of this. I can jump back to my threat timeline and understand, yeah, okay, I get what's going on here. I can see why this was called out. I can see the user went on to log into Office 365, to Microsoft Graph. This is unusual because none of our end users should be signing into the API, accessing that service, I should say. And not only does that resonate with me as a SOC analyst sort of instinctively, but Red Canary's called that out based on the baselining that they've done, the services that this user accesses. Signing into Bing, it looks like this person's just trying to enumerate their access across all of our environment. And then this is especially scary. It looks like they've gotten in to Office 365 and modified an email forwarding rule. So they're forwarding emails to evilactor@gmail.com and they're keying in on these specific words. And it looks like, what they're looking to do is monitor this email inbox and, do whatever else they want to do on those services they've enumerated. But lucky for me, I've got Red Canary. And so you can see here, right in line, you've got playbooks that are firing. So automatically, based on this detection, Red Canary's gone out and isolated this user and cleared their session tokens to delay and prevent this attacker from continuing to use the access that they've got. And I really love this because no matter what time of day, machine speed, Red Canary can respond and interrupt and cause some friction in this attack. Let me show you a little bit about how that works. So on the automation side, it's really easy for me to set up both triggers and playbooks in the Red Canary platform to respond in a very specific way that's acceptable to our business, like our level of risk, what kind of disruption we want to give to our users in these situations. So when a threat is published that says VIP and the severity is high, we're going to Slack and blow up everybody's pagers. And then we're also going to isolate the user, right? And then when the thread is published and it's just suspicious activity, for example, maybe we don't need to light everybody up, but we can just, take action to suspend the users and we'll respond in time. These are just examples of what you can do, uh, not only on the Entra environment, but across, endpoints. You can respond via Okta, sending Slack messages. There's just a bunch of options in the Red Canary platform to orchestrate these responses. Okay, this was a great situation. Like I said, we do threat hunting as well. The Red Canary team is doing threat hunting. So just to show you a little bit what that looks like on the identity side, let's go down. This is the threat hunting page. Every time a threat hunt is executed, you can see what was happening and if there was a resulting threat, which if we scroll down, you can see this one right here. There was a threat that resulted from this threat hunt. So what I'm going to see is a summary of where this came from, what the Red Canary team did for their strategy, what they observed, recommendations on how to prevent this from happening. And then if there were any threats, like if this was detected in my environment, which in this case it was, you can see the linked published threat here. And what that really helps me do is understand how this was detected and tie back after I immediately respond to this threat. What are the recommendations and mitigations that Red Canary has recommended that I can use to prevent this from happening in the future. I love this because, whenever we talk to customers and show them this feature, you can say, you do threat hunting. You do threat hunting because you've got Red Canary and we're doing threat hunting every day for you in your environment. And we've got proof and records of it that you can show your team, your board, whoever wants to know that we're constantly looking across the environment for you. The final part of the demo I want to show you is just reporting, right? It's important to show, the effectiveness of your partners in this space. And so we have a report that shows how effective Red Canary is at detecting threats in your environment compared to the other tools that are coming in. And so essentially what we're doing here is just trying to show that, alerts are important. XDR platforms are good and effective at detecting threats, but Red Canary, using the process that I've laid out today, can do an even better job, and layered on top can provide, additional defense in depth, um, additional coverage that can help make your organization safer. So thanks for uh, following along with the demo. I haven't got a chance to check the chat yet, but the last thing I want to do is just show you or talk to you about, how this has worked for a customer in the past. So in this instance, we had an employee insurance provider with, 10,000, or sorry, an insurance provider with over 10,000 employees, and they were just really struggling getting caught where phishing was leading to account compromise, and it was overwhelming their small team, and it was just really disrupting their business. And so we were able to get in there with our identity threat detection and response service, and help them deliver a process that made this make more sense. And it ended up saving them 50 hours a week on alert triage. They got up above all the false positives, because we were able to use that context to help make sure that we were only publishing uh, real, really interesting behavior to them. And then we also, caught a false negative from one of their tools that bypassed their phishing monitoring solution. We're able to shut down that account takeover really quickly. So that's the end of my prepared presentation. I'll stop the screen share here for a minute and let me just take a look at the chat to see if I can uh, answer any questions. Really appreciate everybody's time, and happy to answer questions if you want to just shoot them over to the Red Canary team. Um, those find their way to us if they're juicy product identity questions. So again, I thank everybody for your time today, and we'll see you next time.